Good evening, everybody. It is I, Lore Seeker, and it is Tuesday, November 15th. It's a very cold and wet evening, and while the Magic community wonders about whether or not Hasbro stock will crash to $10, and the wider world thinks about whether or not we're going to be experiencing World War III in the near future, again, I was earlier, about an hour and a half ago, reminded of a very old theory that I had in regards to Sorin, Avacyn, Serra, and their possible connections. So let me ramble for a bit about this just thought that's occurred to me more than once in the past. Before I get into the main body of the theory, let me set the stage. After cooperating with Nahiri the Lithomancer and Ugin the Spirit Dragon to imprison the Eldrazi Titans on Zendikar, Sorin the Vampire realized that his home plane of Innistrad was also probably in need of protection. It was already a chaotic, dark, and dangerous world, but besides he himself, the world didn't have anything defending it from interplanar threats like the Eldrazi, and Sorin couldn't be there all the time, so he believed that this situation needed mending. Now, the solution Sorin ended up using was a twofold one, a two-layered defensive strategy for Innistrad. The first was an angel, a very powerful angel, one uniquely powerful, in fact. Avacyn, the Archangel, was Sorin's personal creation, and creating her took something from him. It's implied that even if he were an Old Walker still, with all of the powers he had before the mending, Sorin wouldn't be able to replicate Avacyn's creation just because of how difficult it was. Now, the second half was a chunk of silver taken from Innistrad's moon, the Hell Vault. So, Avacyn's purpose was to destroy any threats to Innistrad and to keep the balance on the plane. And the Hell Vault's purpose was to protect the plane from outside forces. Anything that Avacyn couldn't outright destroy was placed within the Hell Vault. Now, the Hell Vault can be a topic for another day. I think that the Hell Vault is something Sorin was inspired to do after watching his friend Nahiri. No, the focus of this theory is Avacyn and how Sorin created her. You see, Sorin was an Old Walker, and Old Walkers are very powerful. Before the events of the Mending, Planeswalkers were limited basically by their knowledge and how much mana they were connected to throughout the multiverse. They were capable of insane feats, but they did have those two limitations. The first one is mana, and that one is fairly simple to bypass. Just travel around, make connections to the land, touch up with ley lines, and boom, eventually you'll have enough mana to do just about anything. But that first restriction, the restriction of knowledge, is a bit harder to circumvent, because as much as some people in the Vorthos community like to think otherwise, and Wizards themselves likes to think otherwise, old-style Planeswalkers pre-mending, they weren't just gods willy-nilly. They had to know how to do what they were doing. This is part of what made Corona, for instance, such a dangerous character. She didn't just need to know how to do what she wanted to do. She could will something into existence. Planeswalkers, meanwhile, they had to at least know what they were doing. They had to know the spells they were trying to cast. And that brings me to the theory. My theory is, Sorin had to have learned how to create angels from somewhere. He didn't just have that knowledge. Clearly, he didn't learn it on Innistrad. The only knowledge there was how to kill angels to make vampires. I believe that at some point in the past, Sorin would have met up with one Serra, and from her learned how to create angels. Specifically, the most powerful kind of angels, archangels. Serra was clearly able to create archangels. She made Radiant, who was able to go toe-to-toe with Urza, one of the most powerful planeswalkers of all time, so Sorin, at some point, could have learned from Serra how to make not just angels, but the most powerful type of angel. And with that knowledge, he created Avacyn. Now, the biggest problem with this theory is that Sorin, being a vampire composed exclusively of black mana, would have been attacked pretty much on sight by the Angels of Serra's realm, and probably by Serra herself. After all, Serra's realm was a realm of pure white mana that abhorred all kinds of dark abominations, and they did try to kill Xancha, sort of. So I don't think Sorin and Serra would have gotten along very well, and it might have taken a bit of effort on his part to get her to do anything other than try to kill him, but the possibility is there. We know that the Eldrazi were sealed away thousands and thousands of years ago, and it took Sorin a long time to get around to actually making Avacyn, which only occurred about 1,000 years ago. So there's plenty of room in there for Sorin to have met up with Serra and learned the craft of angel making. Or maybe they just, did it the old-fashioned way. Either way, it's a theory that I think is fascinating, and I just wanted to share it with all of you guys, even if it doesn't really have a lot of credence. After all, it's not something we're going to be able to learn anything more about if it is true or if it isn't. After all, Serra has been dead for a very long time, and Wizards seems uninterested in fleshing Sorin out beyond his mopey self that we've seen lately. That's all I've got. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I hope you have a splendid evening, even as the snow threatens to bury us all.